Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
This is Jordan McLeod from Texas State. You're listening to Fun Belt Podcast.
This is the Fun Belt Podcast, part of the Believe Network.
Hosts the Dusty Thibodeaux of Warhawk Report, Jeremy Harper of Howl Racer, and Shane Mettlen of the Daily News Record.
I think it's potentially a very good week for the Sun Belt.
But I'm just kind of going off on a random rant. It's just frustrating.
Welcome back to Fun Belt Podcast. Joining me is Tibbs. Tibbs is never sick, never has any gut problems, never has any diarrhea problems. Our other co-host, Shane Mettlen, possibly has those problems, Tibbs.
I'm glad that we picked up a sponsorship from Pepto-Bismol.
He's going to need a crate of that. There's something going on. He's the only real journalist on the show. We wish him well. We lose a little bit of credibility without him. Too bad. We're moving forward. Tibbs, in the Sun Belt today, there were some announcements regarding starting quarterbacks. Do you have those in front of you, sir? Or do you have
I just know him.
Committed
I
to
just
memory?
know him. I just know him.
All right, well, let's give me one.
Not really that many surprises, though. I mean, we knew J.C. French at Georgia Southern. I think that shocked you a little bit there, Jeremy, because you were expecting someone else to take over there.
I was kind of expecting they had brought in a transfer. I suddenly forget his name, but J.C. French, coming out of Memphis for last year, played a few snaps before getting a little dinged up. Looks like he's got the starting job.
Gio Lopez at South Alabama, not shocked at all.
He was the incumbent, and he's got talent, man. Yeah, I've seen him play, and he knows how to sling the rock. In fact, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Tibbs, he was the bowl MVP of the bowl that South Alabama went to. Am I correct about that?
I thought it was the guy with the post-game cheap shot.
Let me see here. Yes. No, not that guy. That guy was not the bowl MVP. That guy had to apologize. No, he was the 68 Ventures Bowl MVP. After passing for 3 touchdowns, I think running one in on the ground, too. Really ran it up on Eastern Michigan. And if I recall, Eastern Michigan did not take that very well.
Gee, what gave that away? Was it the bench clearing brawl at the end? Or what?
Yeah, I think that was it. What an ugly mark. What a stain on the fabric of college football.
Speaking of stains.
Yeah.
I don't know how we transition that. Southern Miss named their starting quarterback as well. Florida State transfer Rodmaker.
Rodmaker, Tate Rodmaker, Rodmaker. I'm not sure.
I assure you, somebody will be in our DMs correcting us, so it doesn't matter. Bob Smith, sure.
We will have deserved that, but we pretty much knew he was going to come in. He came in highly regarded. Has a pretty good pedigree. Didn't get a whole lot of starting time, but maybe he turns it around for Southern Miss. Southern Miss definitely needs a spark, though at quarterback. Billy Wiles was there last year. Wiles transferred to Appalachian State to back up Joey Aguilar. So, So now it's this Tate Road or Rodemaker guy who's going to be leading Southern Miss. BetOnline is not only the world's most trusted betting platform, it's not only the #1 source for everything football. It is my platform for online betting. From the preseason NFL to college kicking off, BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the game is being played. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our winner-take-all $300,000 NFL Survivor Pool for the upcoming season. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on the game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today and use promo code BLEAV, that's Believe, and get in on the action. Bet online, the game starts here.
But more importantly than that, Jeremy, we have our esteemed guest, the King Onion himself, Ryan Nanni, joins us. Ryan, welcome back to the show. It's been a little over a year.
Yeah.
I think the world has stopped spinning, and college football and athletics overall have changed, maybe for the better, maybe for the worse.
I mean, the Sun Belt is the most stable conference in college football
Thank you.
since we last talked.
Nothing has changed for the Sun Belt
Yeah.
except for the possibility of getting iPads and headsets just like
Sure.
everybody else.
Sure. Like
Other than that,
internal changes, sure. The Sun Belt and the MAC are just like, we will not be moved by the shenanigans going on around us. We will not participate in the ACC Stanford debate going forward.
now, Ryan, first of all, I think of you as a college sports provocateur. Is that a good way to describe you?
I've certainly been called worse things, so I'm fine with it.
So, as a college sports provocateur, you're seeing what has happened between February of last year, when we last spoke, to now. What are some of the changes that you found the most, dismaying, confounding, the ones that make you go, oh, is it the Pac-12 dissolving? Is it the rise of NIL? Is it that Oklahoma State is putting QR codes on the back of their helmets? They might as well just drill a coin slot in the top and have people drop in coins as they walk by, right?
I think
what is bugging you?
I think the Pac-12 dissolving, it takes the cake only because of the speed in which it all happened. The other thing, like, NIL was a snowball that, like, we kind of saw going back into, like, 2020. And if you want to go all the way back to, like, Ed O'Bannon's court case. Like, these are things you could at least see in the horizon, like, oh, this is a thing that is coming. But the way in which the Pac-10, because USC and UCLA we already knew were out the door, the way in which it all just, like, fell apart, like, pretty easily, that was really wild to me. And it's the kind of thing that it gives me pause because, one of the other things that wasn't true when we last spoke, Florida State and Clemson weren't actively suing their own conference in multiple states. That's a new thing too. But I think it's, Pac-12, the Pac-12 was an incredibly old conference. Most of these members had been there since the beginning. The idea that it can all just, like, disappear pretty quickly if the right people aren't committed to sort of making it work. Like, I don't think I could sit here with a straight face and say, like, the ACC will still exist in 3 years, guaranteed. Do I think it probably will? Yeah, but, like, I think it'd be pretty foolish to say, like, yeah, definitely, they'll be fine. Maybe it'll look different, but they'll be fine.
So, Ryan, I know you're a Florida guy, so this is going to go over, like a good old shit sandwich there. Playing NCAA football, I had to go back to my hometown Auburn Tigers. I'm playing at SEC. One of my non-conference games was Cal. And even the commentators in the game are like, yeah, this matchup between the ACC and SEC, which already made my head hurt. And they're like, they're in the same footprint and very much rivals. I'm like, how the hell is that a footprint rivalry?
Finally, Auburn-Cal, the SEC-ACC matchup that the conference needed to add to Florida, Florida State, and Georgia Tech, and Louisville, Kentucky, and so on. Yeah, the rules just kind of seem out the window when it comes to conference realignment specifically. I guess, Jeremy, what makes me less worried about NIL is I can sort of say, like, well, in some part of my head, this was always happening. It was just behind the scenes and, like, behind closed doors. Stanford wasn't secretly an ACC team in the 1990s, like, this SMU wasn't accidentally, like, stumbling its way into a new conference. It all feels very fluid and very weird right now. And the funniest part of it, truthfully, is how much the people who make these things happen, how bad they feel about it. Like, oh man, they're so sad to see these. Like, I would, if you knew that your murderer was going to come to your funeral and be like, oh, he was such a cool dude. I'm so sorry he died.
Yeah,
like,
but the guys that make it happen, they're almost like that meme that are crying, but with a wad of money to try it.
Yes.
Like, oh, it's so horrible what we did to the Conference of Champions.
That's right.
The greed.
That's right. That's
you
right.
can't believe that they did that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the kind of the sad part is that you get the granddaddy conference like, the Conference of Champions, the 12. and you see those blue-blooded programs, and they always talk about the pride of being on the West Coast, and and then it's suddenly like, oh well, we're in the Big Ten now.
Yep.
We're going to play Michigan. We're going to play Rutgers. It just kind of drives me crazy. When last we spoke, we were talking about the Sun Belt. How that's a footprint that is manageable. Teams can travel, whether you're the golf team or the football team. It doesn't matter. But now it just doesn't seem like either it's not a big deal or it's something that these conference makers haven't really thought of. Like they're like, yeah, let's iron all the problems out later and collect the money now.
Yeah, I think it's more the latter. And I think it's sort of like, if we have this money, these problems must be fixable in some way, shape, or form. And I don't know what that'll look like. Like, it may be that in some sports, I think basketball is the one where it feels the hardest because, the Big Ten's not going to be like, yeah, UCLA, do whatever you want in basketball. They want UCLA They want UCLA and Indiana to play in basketball.
Yeah.
So we can all remember what, the 80s were like, basically.
That magic rivalry when we weren't alive.
Yeah, it's just, I think there is a lot of like, we will solve these problems later. The tricky part about that is everything that's happened over the past, 5 years, it's like, there's always new problems to figure out too. There's always new sort of like challenges and, at first it was, the transfer portal. Now it's NIL plus the transfer portal. Now it's going to be, when somebody decides to bring a lawsuit to say eligibility standards that I shouldn't be capped at 5 years of eligibility. Okay, well, what happens if that goes away? Like, everything is sort of like up for grabs right now in a way that I think is very disorienting, but is also, if you zoom way, 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 way out, you're like, this sport has been through periods like this before. It just wasn't so concentrated, and we didn't know as much about it. You just would like read about it once in the paper every week or something.
Probably when the Southwest Conference dissolved, there was the same type of feeling.
Yep.
But for a group of five standpoint, this is not quite a group of five standpoint. But when have you felt or heard anything from the Washington State, Oregon State group? Are those fans just like, what the hell happened? We used to be among the elite, and now we're trolling around with the Mountain West. Are they accepting their lot in life, or are they still kind of considering themselves, part of this Power Five structure?
I think partially they're still pissed. Like, I feel like they think they got a bad deal. Like every conference has a Washington State or an Oregon State. And by that, I mean somebody who is not necessarily going to pull their full weight financially.
I'm sorry. I was sneezing.
Sure. Like, every conference, the Big Ten and the SEC have them for sure. Like, the Big 12, weirdly, is one where I'm like, I don't know, but like for years, Kansas football was that. Iowa State football was that for a long stretch. So I think they're sort of like, nothing changed from their perspective. Like, Pullman was always far away. They didn't do anything to sort of like make Pullman more difficult to get to. I think there is some element of shock, honestly, going on, because the thing that happened, especially in Washington State's case, was like, this all happens, and then your AD leaves to go be Washington's AD. And that's like a super gut punch where it's like, well, not only are we getting left behind,
I'm not sticking with this ship.
Right, but our leadership, who should be figuring out what does this look like, they're not even sticking with us. So I think like they are still in existential crisis mode. I will say, I have enjoyed how much they are fighting for like to maintain the rights and privileges of the Pac-12. It's like, if you're gonna leave, we're going to milk this as long as we can. It's obviously not a good long-term strategy. Being the Pac-2 is not like a thing you can do in perpetuity. But for the short term, it's like, you might as well try to screw them out of every piece you can. And I don't know what happens after that.
Do you try? Is it worth lassoing the members, or all of them, or most of them, of the Mountain West and saying this is the new Pac-12? Because the Pac-12 as a brand still has probably some value.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the Mountain West teams have that match up to that value in their minds, but do you think that's a possibility?
It's that Mountain West Big Sky merger. That's what saves the Pac-12.
Yeah. I think it depends on who you talk to. I think Washington State, maybe that makes more sense. Like, there's some natural rivalries in there that sort of already sort of fit with what they're doing. Oregon State, it's a little harder. Like, I don't think there are any good answers, is the really frustrating part, is that everybody else figured out at least a good, like Stanford and Cal going to the ACC is not a good answer, but it's better than a lot of the other ones. Yeah. And I think the frustrating thing, if you are Washington State and Oregon State, is like all of the answers kind of stink right now. And maybe you are better off just saying like, okay, we're just going to ride it out for a little bit and see what happens. We're not going to do that thing TCU did where we're going to go join the Big East, and before the ink is even dry, actually, we're taking the Big 12 invite instead.
Yeah, well, the TCU is sort of a group of five. It might not a group of five success story. It's more of a group of five maturation story.
Yes, sure.
They get thrown out of the big time. Mm-hmm. They're vagabonds bouncing from the USA. I think they're in the Mountain West for a while, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then ends up at where they ended up, and then suddenly gets right back into the thickest.
Gets the call, yeah.
Yeah. So I know maybe that happens to Oregon State and Washington.
Maybe so. Yeah.
But Ryan, I learned this about you, and I really didn't know this.
Oh,
you're the smartest guy in the room. That you are a full JD attorney.
Yeah, not practicing anymore. It's important that I lead with that. Not disbarred, just stepped down from the bar.
Oh, okay.
Just relinquished my bar license.
I don't want anybody to come away from this show knowing that Ryan Nanni was disbarred unceremoniously. Kind of like the Rudy Giuliani of Florida.
I want you to know, if I was
only in the state of Montana.
If I was disbarred, I would brag about it. I do want you to know that.
All right, well, that might be more fun.
Sorry, Tibbs, you were saying.
So since you can still legally practice, but you choose not to, is that the better way of phrasing it?
Sure, let's go with that. That seems safe.
How does this all go to the wind when Title IX is finally brought to the forefront?
Oh, boy. I mean, you're seeing that a little bit in the House settlement right now with, I think it's some women rowers who are intervening in that lawsuit right now and trying to sort of wedge themselves into setting aside the settlement as it looks right now. What's weird is that it feels very much like what Jeremy was saying about non-revenue sports and travel. Everybody just seems to be like, well, we're going to figure that out later. We're going to sort of decide, how that all translates at a later date. I think there are probably some thoughtful ways to do it. And I do think this was one of the ways in which NIL sort of served a useful purpose, where you could sort of say like, okay, every athlete on campus has the same sort of opportunity to go out and make money from, working at a camp or doing an autograph session or doing a commercial campaign or something like that. And it doesn't matter if you play on the football team or you're a gymnast or you're a softball player, whatever. But the idea that we are moving closer to colleges directly sharing revenue, I don't think they have a good answer for. Like, I think the answer is we're going to kick the can, and by the time that comes up, the people who are making this deal won't have that job anymore. They won't be the athletic director. They won't be the school president, and it won't be their problem to worry about, frankly.
And look, I'm definitely a big proponent of Title IX because I know a lot of women athletics into the collegiate level. So you might as well get the money while you can there. Mm-hmm. So I'm definitely more in favor of female athletes getting paid. But when we look at it, I mean, even if I were to be your paralegal there, Brian, mm-hmm. I wouldn't know what the hell I was doing. And so can I go to you saying, yeah, I need $500,000 a week to be able to be your paralegal? And
right.
No, because you don't know what you're doing. There's not the equity. You don't have the quality. So do you think that that's going to be one of the arguments that comes up as well?
I think the interesting thing, and this is what the rowers who have intervened in the House settlement have brought up, is sort of that the assumptions we make about what sports make money and what sports don't are all based on the way the system has run. And their argument is sort of like, look, people, now that we are investing, now that we, at the collegiate level and at the professional level are investing money and media attention and time into women's sports, they are growing. They're growing in interest. They are growing in revenue in ways that they didn't before. And it kind of makes you, like, I think it raises an interesting question of, are the assumptions wrong? We're all sort of saying, football makes all the money. At some schools, it's men's basketball as well. At a very small number of schools, like maybe it's women's basketball or, Nebraska volleyball or Oklahoma softball or something like that. But I think there is a good question about sort of like, is that true because it's just always the way it's been? Is there interest and an appetite for these sports that maybe doesn't completely upend? Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you like, Tennessee football is gonna be dethroned, and the baseball team is going to be the top revenue generator at Tennessee going forward. But maybe the ratios are wrong, and maybe sort of the split is wrong in ways that if we lock it in now and we just operate from that understanding, it makes it hard to sort of say like where the actual value is. Again, this is why I think there's a lot of punting going on. Maybe the more optimistic way to look at it is these are all sports and these are all athletic departments that will need to keep finding new revenue sources. There is probably only so much you can squeeze out of a football team. You can keep chasing bigger conference television deals. You can only expand your stadium so much and raise your ticket prices so much. Maybe the answer is like, okay, we need to find ways to take non-revenue sports and get them closer to revenue sports with investment and marketing and thoughtful ways to like not just make these afterthoughts anymore.
All right, I'm going to switch it up just a little bit. I'm going to say two words, and I want you to tell me the feelings that bubble to the surface.
Okay, good.
Oh, Jesus.
Billy Napier.
Stress. Stress is the number one answer, and stress and doubt. Stress and doubt are the two feelings I have.
See, that's what the Sun Belt has given you. Stress and doubt.
It's the best defense I can muster at this point is I think Billy Napier was the right hire at the wrong time.
Ooh, okay.
I think there's a lot of sort of like reverse engineering of or rewriting of history is what it really is going on right now with Dan Mullen, where it's sort of like, look, he took them to the SEC championship game. He put all these guys in the league. The offense could do this and that, blah, blah, blah. The defense was a mess. Recruiting was had huge holes that were not like they were not in any way, shape, or form closing the gap between themselves and Georgia, and they were probably still getting caught by Kentucky and Tennessee, and that's before you even factor in like Texas and Oklahoma coming into the league. That said, Billy Napier was brought in because he could recruit. Like that was the main sort of thrust of this is what he gives you that Dan Mullen doesn't. And then what recruiting was changed completely because of NIL. Like the Jaden Rashada thing was a really embarrassing but a really useful reminder of like, oh, this game is different than what it was. And whether it's because, this is where it gets hard to say, whether it was because Billy Napier wasn't ready for that new world or because Florida and their boosters and their athletic department and this, that, and the other, like just didn't know how to conduct themselves. And a lot of schools are like that. It does feel like he is somebody who is built to recruit in a world that doesn't exist anymore. And if that's your main selling point, like, brother, you got problems. That's before you talk about the schedule Florida has to play. That's before you talk about having to see Florida State almost make the playoff last year, and Miami maybe be in position to like go on a deep run this year with a really good transfer quarterback in Cam Ward. Like, I am having a lot of trouble seeing the upside. I don't think that means like, you got to fire Billy Napier no matter what. I think you still let it play out and hope that, like, I think, if I'm being charitable, Graham Mertz was a much better transfer quarterback than I thought he would be.
All right.
I watched him play at Wisconsin. He was not great, and he was much better at Florida. They have some good skill position players going on. But, like, I think you are hitting the point where it's like, what is success? What would success even look like? And is that even worthwhile? Like, we're talking about if Florida can go 8-4 this season, people are going to be like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Step back and you're like, what has happened where Florida going 8-4 is now like, oh my gosh, that's overachieving. Like,
Well, with
that
conferences getting so big, though,
Yes,
Ryan,
yeah,
does
yeah.
it become to where only a very select few programs can now ever expect to get double-digit wins? Are we doing this to ourselves?
Yes. To some extent, that is and will be the case. I think the flip side of that is going to be how much are you putting yourself in a position to win the edge games that flip you from an 8-win team to a 10-win team? Like, if you are an 8-win team who can't stay within 3 touchdowns of the 11-win team,
Yeah.
the gap kind of doesn't mean anything anymore. And it feels like you can't close it in a meaningful way. Like, this is, maybe this is like the Tennessee-Alabama relationship, what it has been for a long time, where, like, you could have quote-unquote good Tennessee teams, and then they just get stomped by Alabama. And it just sort of reminds you, like, yeah, it's nice that we're making progress and we won 7 games this year instead of 5, but, like, if that's the goal, we're still really, really far away from it. But
Yeah, and that was the sin for Butch Jones when he was coaching Tennessee, is that he didn't beat Alabama.
Right.
And it followed him to Arkansas State.
Right.
Hey, you failed at Tennessee.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my God, you brought him to all these bowl victories, and,
Yes.
and you just didn't beat Alabama, and that was
Yeah.
the win. So, yeah, that is really tough to be in that kind of conference, and now to have so many good schools in it to where, I mean, if you're a Vanderbilt, if you're
a Vanderbilt, you're happy with the paycheck.
You just hope baseball stays relevant.
You hope baseball stays relevant. You hope, like, the women's basketball team had a little bit better season last year. They got to fire Jerry Stackhouse. They really wanted to fire Jerry Stackhouse. Yeah, like, so I do think for some of these schools, you do have to set the bar. Maybe that's the advantage. If you are, let's say, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State is probably in this category. South Carolina may or may not be.
sometimes not.
Yeah, you can sort of say, like, bowl eligibility is where we want to get. And anything beyond that is sort of icing on the cake. And we sort of are approaching this from a very rational perspective of we understand who we are in this ecosystem.
But with this new college football
Yeah,
playoff system,
yeah.
do you feel like the group of 5 has any shot anymore, especially with the SEC and the Big Ten getting so big? And quite frankly, the media outcry is we need more Big Ten SEC teams in the college playoffs, not more, like a North Texas coming in or Appalachian State. Is there a door being shut on the group of 5, or is there a door being opened? I can't quite tell.
Can I give you the most lawyerly answer, which is
Yes, because you're a lawyer.
Yeah.
You're our barrister.
I'm hovering over the boot button right now, so answer carefully, sir.
I think the most lawyerly answer is it depends.
Okay.
Because I've pulled up the Sunbelt helmet schedule just to sort of like make a point here. App State goes to Clemson, Coastal plays Virginia, Georgia State plays Georgia Tech, Marshall plays Virginia Tech, Arkansas State's playing Michigan. Texas State is playing Arizona State, Troy's playing Iowa. I'm not saying like the Sun Belt has to win all of these games, or the Sun Belt will win most of these games. But I think the fact that these games are on the schedule is important, because if you are a group of 5 team hoping to make your case, I think what has not changed from 4 to 12 is like you will need a game against something of a name opponent. Like, just doing it internally is not going to matter to the people who make the decisions. Cincinnati needed that win against Notre Dame to sort of say, like, yes, this proves our legitimacy.
Sure.
UCF needed that bowl game win against, I think it was Auburn, if memory serves.
It was, yeah.
To sort of, like, say, like, yes, we can prove that. And this is the same thing that happened to Boise State in the BCS days, was people weren't, I don't think people were, some people were mad because it's like Boise State's undefeated and they're not getting a shot. But then they saw Boise State beat Oklahoma, and it's sort of like, they have demonstrated that they can participate here. So the reason I say it depends is this. If you still have these games on the schedule, if South Alabama is still getting a game against LSU and ULM is playing Texas and so on, like, there are more than you'd think. Fair. Then I think you have a reasonable chance. You need, one really strong team to have a really strong season, and you need them to win that sort of like marquee opponent, that beat that marquee opponent that they have on the schedule. But if these bigger conferences end up meaning that the Big Ten and the SEC, and maybe to some extent the Big 12 and the ACC, start saying, like, we don't want to do this anymore. Yeah. There's no upside for us.
That's where I was at. Yeah.
That's where I think you do get frozen out as a group of 5 conference, because then you have no opportunity to build the resume that, like, the playoff makers want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get that. If I'm a businessman, Jeremy, if all I care about is the bottom line, and I look at the landscape, I'm like, yeah, I would love the Big Ten and the SEC to almost break away from the rest of these losers.
Right.
And they can go off and do whatever they want. But we're going to have big-time ESPN, Fox Sports, tournament time here. Mm-hmm. And people are going to say, oh, it's going to kill college sports. Nobody will watch. And it'll be the highest-rated television event every year. I remember when it was an all-SEC college football playoffs. This is boring. Nobody's going to watch it. We're boycotting. Screw these guys. And it was the highest-ranked one that came out. So people are just going to watch it. So, yes, I think I'm with you on there, Ryan. Eventually, these guys are going to figure it out, that why split the pie when you can have all the pie?
Yeah. I fear that that's the case.
And we'll lose something, Ryan. We're going to lose something. That's pure and gold. We're going to lose those Boise States. We're going to lose those Cincinnatis.
And I think what maybe those schools are forgetting is that, like, there is value to that for them as well. Like, ULM beating Nick Saban in his first year
is still talked about.
Yes. Yes, and it's like,
I've never heard that.
It's these little pieces of connective tissue that, like, keep people invested, because, like, I think the thing you want to avoid if you're college football is the NFL problem. The NFL problem is this. It's a good problem to have. I want to be very clear. Last season doesn't matter. The season starts, and we start fresh, and, like, nobody's really going to care that the 49ers lost in the Super Bowl. Like, is it going to be a little bit of a storyline? Yeah, whatever. But, like, it doesn't really hang around you. It's just like, that's last season's story. We're not worrying about that. Nobody cares, it's not like, oh man, remember when the Bills made 4 Super Bowls and lost them all? Like, no, that doesn't matter. That's not this team.
It was a great 30 for 30.
Right, exactly. And I think there is something, like, Michigan winning the national title last year didn't just matter to Michigan fans because it was Michigan. It mattered because of everything that had happened in between that. It mattered because they had lost to App State. It mattered because they had struggled for years against Ohio State. It mattered because for a while they were on the wrong side of the Michigan State rivalry. And all of these things sort of build up. It mattered because Rich Rod flamed out, and because Brady Hoke flamed out, and because the NCAA was coming after him. Like, I don't think sometimes the college football power brokers understand that, like, these seasons are not disconnected. They are part of these, like, evolving, intricate storylines that work really well. Like, Texas State last year is a good story because of what Texas State had been for a decade before that. Yeah. Because of who that coach is and what he has meant in college football. And that's the thing I think you will lose if you go to a Super League, because it just, nobody cares about the old stories anymore.
And I think that kind of comes back full circle, Ryan, to what we were discussing at the very beginning of the show, is the collapse of the Pac-12. Tibbs and I don't care about the Pac-12.
Sure.
They're way on the West Coast.
Yep.
We're creatures of the Sun Belt.
Yep.
If we have to, complain about a bigger league, it's always the SEC or the ACC, right?
Right.
But personally, I kind of like the Pac-12 because, one, they didn't impact me, and they had that history, and I can enjoy that conference. And now we just sort of absorb it like some sort of cloud of entropy that came through and destroyed it all.
Yeah.
And what's left is a big pile of money that none of us are getting. The fans are still getting screwed.
Yeah.
No one cares what the fans think about. They're like,
No.
hey, yeah, fuck yeah, we'll do California. And we'll watch that.
Yeah.
I guess we will. That's the whole thing about it.
Yes, but you know why we will watch when Rutgers goes to USC on a Friday night for I think it's like an 11 or midnight Eastern kick?
Why?
We're gonna watch it because it's weird.
It's weird.
We're gonna watch it because it's weird. Like, we're not gonna watch it because it's Big Ten football and that like means something. We're gonna watch it because it's weird.
And it's the third leg of a parlay.
Yes, probably that too. Probably that too.
Right. So all right. So another kind of slant. It is moving in day.
Yes.
A lot of universities. I don't know if all of them are. Tibbs is. It's not all of them, right? But it's sort of a.
Most of the normal ones, unless you're a Conference USA school in Ruston.
Yeah, that's probably true. My son, for some reason, doesn't go back to school until next week. But at least that's what he told me.
He dropped out. He got disbarred.
But even on Twitter, I was like kind of remembering my first day at Arkansas State, where I moved into this cinder block dormitory that had like a communal bathroom, gang showers. It had like a sink in your room where you're supposed to wash your hands. But quite frankly, gentlemen, that's where we all peed. They didn't want to go
because you're being green, obviously.
Yeah, that's right. I wanted to say so. But I mean, nowadays you walk on the campus, it's like it's like you're on a cruise ship,
right?
You got Subway and the Chipotle and Chipotle, sorry, in your dorm room area. Everybody gets their own room, and it's real pretty and stuff. Ryan, how was your experience? And then let's see how it compares to Tibbs.
With moving in as a freshman at Florida at a date that I will not affirmatively identify, but I will say it did not start with a 19. So I have that going for me.
Okay, good, great, because it did for me.
It did for me. Thanks,
again,
kids.
I think mostly, here's what I think is probably still true, despite everything you're saying being right about, like, the accommodations are nicer and sort of they're wooing you with, like, a better student experience, blah, blah, blah. There is still something so ridiculous about, like, well, you're 18 now, and now you are in charge of your own life. Now, like, you will do your own laundry. And I think back, I was thinking back about it, and I'm like, if I had to guess how many times I changed my sheets freshman year of college that wasn't related to my roommate stumbled home and dumped Little Caesars on my bed or something similar.
Yeah. No catastrophic event. Just
and maybe frankly, maybe I needed the catastrophic events to like keep the laundry moving at a normal rate. You're just so gross, honestly, because you don't know any better. And I don't think there's anything colleges can do to make freshman dudes less, like, naturally gross and clueless, right?
No, we're all completely assholes and dumb. Right. I remember I had a guy down the hall say, "Hey, Jeremy, you want to play some Nintendo?" Like, yeah, I want to play some Nintendo. Yeah. So I go to his room, and we're playing the Nintendo.
And I'm 7-inch screen.
Yeah, with 8 bits, it's great. And I look around, he's got all these jars. I'm like, what the hell's with these jars? Oh, those are my piss jars. He had them all over the goddamn room. I'm like, why don't you pour them out?
What kind of rural Arkansas stuff is this that you went through?
No, this is classic Arkansas behavior. This is true. But even then, I never went and played Nintendo with that guy again.
No.
Our relationship is over.
Yeah.
I will be in the sink like a
civilized human. That's right.
So how was it at ULM, Tibbs? I mean, I'm sure it was Shangri-La, probably gardens and quartets and singing.
Champagne.
So going to NLU at the time, 27 years ago, Jeremy. 27 years.
Well, you're an old man.
Yeah, and Ryan's only 24, so I feel really bad.
Yeah, there wasn't a 19 in my.
Listen, it was pretty damn close, just to be clear.
It was a way going to college where you knew nobody there. So they're like, oh, you'll have a roommate. It's awesome. To this day, 27 years later, I know my roommate's name was Chris. Chris was a bag of books. And that dude did not unpack his bag of books the entire semester. So I assure you that he was not there the following semester when I got another roommate.
Nice. Yeah, you guys both talk about roommates. At Arkansas State, they had, in the 80s, they did a burst of building, right?
Mm-hmm.
A dorm building, anticipating a burst of enrollment, and it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So for an extra $20 a semester, you had your own room. So it was great. That's why everybody's peeing in jars. There's nobody to stop us. We're just like, it might have been more than pee. I don't know. I tell you what, though, we did, like, the next year I was in another one. We still had the communal bathroom and the gangbang shower.
Mm-hmm.
And all the Arkansas kids, us, were like, okay, we've got a rule. Only 2 people at a time take a shower so you can be on the opposite ends. We had these dumb rules. Except the European guys that lived with us. They would get in there, set chairs around the shower, and steam it up, and make tea. They would hang out. Yeah, they're butt naked, just enjoying life. I'm like,
but college is about expanding your horizons, meeting people who aren't like you. And I've never met somebody who steams up the shower to make it a tea sauna. Like
tea in jars.
Yeah.
Those are the guys you've got to know.
Yeah, this is how you learn to navigate a world that's full of very, very different people.
Well, that is why you go to college.
That's right.
Not necessarily to learn or even unpack your book bag, Tibbs, but to experience other people. So, yeah, that's exactly what we did.
It was fantastic. And to this day, I couldn't tell you the guy's last name. I know he was from West Monroe. That's about all I got for you there. Probably the only thing better was the second year when I somehow got suckered into moving into the fraternity house.
Oh, wow. Okay. Were you in the fraternity?
And that's where I learned that somebody had the great foresight to double insulate the closet. And so I moved my bed into my closet and had this great living room. I slept in my closet with my clothes. It was fantastic. Couldn't hear anything. It was pitch black. Best room I've ever had.
Well, meanwhile, in our dorm, someone took a shit in the dryer.
How drunk were you that night, Jeremy?
But instead of like demanding answers,
as you're not lawyer, you don't have to answer that question. All right?
I'm happy to say it wasn't me. At least I don't think so. I mean, there were plenty of nights where it could have been me.
I mean, look, there's no upside to admitting that you shat in the dryer, right?
No,
like nobody's gonna be like, "Thank you for your honesty." That's just your rep forever on campus. Yeah. You might as well never admit to it.
Like if your wife is like, there should be no secrets between us. Tell me everything.
That's yes. That one is tightly locked. Even after I die, you can't find that out.
Oh no, there can't be like a letter that you're. This is my confession. I was whole chat in there.
Our whole life together was a lie.
Ryan, thank you for being on the show. We appreciate this. I think maybe once every year and 6 months.
God, who even knows what it'll look like next time we chat?
We're all going to be like much older, and college football isn't even going to be here.
It's going to be great.
I remember the first time you visited was because you were trying to visit as many podcasts as you could possibly
Correct.
could.
Yes.
Did you ever get a final number?
It was right around 75, which was too many. Turns out, at one point, I think it was well after I had talked to y'all. At one point, my wife was like, "Why are you doing this?" And I was like, "Just for fun." And she's like, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard."
It's almost like shitting in a dryer.